specialized in apples. And he was telling me about one of his professors was teaching him things that they were doing at their farm that just revolutionized their farm. For instance, lime. That was the principal thing they were doing. And everybody thinks, well, we lime to change the pH. And yes, you do. But there are many, many things that are much more important about lime than just changing the pH. pH tends to get overemphasized to the extent that some people say, well, my pH is fine, so I'm not going to lime. And we always get, in North Carolina, we would get recommendations back from Clemson, Georgia, and they would say, oh, don't lime. Well, they would look at pH, it's about 5, 6, 5, 6, 7. Oh, we don't need to lime. And we would look at the rest of their analysis and say, lime. Well, they think we great, because we tell them to do this. Another thing we do is to tell them to lime things that people are called. You heard this acid loading thing? If I tell you there's no such thing on the face of the earth, would you believe it? They're acid tolerant. We go in the woods and we look at things where they're growing and we measure the pH of that soil. We go out here under the pines. I bet you under these turkey oaks and those longleaf pines right across the road over there, if you took a pH read, I bet you'd be somewhere in the neighborhood of 4.5, 4.7. Now that's probably 100 times more acidic than what we normally would recommend growing anything around here. But the things are surviving. Now, they're not being taken up by a lot of other weeds, are they? It's because they tolerate that low acidity, and nothing else will. Even weeds. Some weeds just will not tolerate that low pH. So, we got to change our thought. And I'm going to tell you some things that you probably haven't heard of that before. Well, in this book by Dr. Tidings, we had a handout. Did y'all get a handout? I know Courtney made a handout. You guys did some with them. And it's got a link on there to a book that he wrote. So I put this up in the introduction. Lime is probably the cheapest ingredient in the garden that you can give the greatest return on your dollar and on your labor. If you couldn't do anything else, if you couldn't even buy any fertilizer, I would say buy lime first because it's that important. And so we mostly think of it as changing the pH. Just dispel that from your thought. There's so many other things that are so important about lime than that. And here's the link to that, and that should be on, I think, on the handout somewhere up there. Dr. Tidings, he was at Rutgers, he was at Virginia Tech, and then when I met this fellow, he was at Michigan State. Now, this is back in the 60s, so I'm 78 years old, so that's a long time ago. And it was incredible. He sent me a copy of this book, and it just revolutionized my thought. It revolutionized what we recommend people do. And I'll give you some examples in just a minute that you'll see things that you said, that thing, acid loading plant. This is the hardest thing for people to get over is they've heard that all their lives. And for instance, too many books come in from Europe. And what does it say, particularly in Russell Britain, or the best gardening countries in the world? And they'll come in and they'll say, grow on a lime-free soil. Why do they say that? Well, England is one big limestone outcrop. And they say don't add lime. And they probably don't need to in most of the areas. But around here on this sandhill sand that we see right through here, this straddle about 15, 20 miles wide, that goes through North Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. You cannot lime too much. And people said, well, can I overdo it? I've never had anybody overlime. Just spell that. So I'd rather overdo it to make sure you have enough than to try to say, well, I'll just conserve a little bit here. It's so cheap compared to what other things you can get. As you'll see with fertilizer and other things. So if you want to go, this book, matter of fact, this morning I just got online and tried to look it up. It's out for rent. I couldn't even find one on Amazon. They do have a what do you call it, a version where you can listen to it. Yeah, you can buy that. but that's kind of hard looking up things. You just listen to it through. It's much better when you get the book. And it is online. It's a PDF file. And you can go through it, and it's very, very helpful if you can't get a copy of the book. And so what do we learn? Well, the first thing most people say, well, we want to change the pH. It's soil's not, it's mostly too acid, so we want to change the pH. Yes, we do. And around here, we usually want to raise it. I don't think I've ever had a situation where somebody started up soil sample like this. The pH was too high, mostly around here too low. And then microflora fauna in the soil. This is fungi that live in symbiosis with the root system of plants. Even nematodes. Most people think nematodes are horrible, but there are a lot of nematodes that are beneficial. And so those are very, very desirable, and they do better at a more neutral pH than they do very acidic. Nutrient availability. Many nutrients are far more available at a mid-pH range than they are if it's too acid or if it's really too alkaline. Like out west, they have the problem. We ship, with our mineral division, we still operate that. We ship all over the country. The number one state we ship to is California. And it's just amazing. And the problem we run into, because we sell so many tea olives, is their pH is so high, the plants don't do well. And generally speaking, if you've got a high rainfall area, you'll be more acidic pH. If you get a low rainfall area like you do in the southwest, you'll get a very high pH. So that's just a general rule of thumb right there. But nutrient availability can be tied up if the pH isn't exactly right. And then we'll go into this here. Supplies of calcium and magnesium are the two major mineral elements in line that you're after. Not just the calcium, but the magnesium is probably just as important. And I'll show you some examples of that in a minute. And then it improves soil structure. Now, the interesting thing about lime is, if you use it in proper quantities, if you have a too sandier soil, it's going to give you a quality that's much more amenable to growing things. And if it's too heavy clay, lime tends to cause the soil to what we call flocculate. It kind of crumbles together and not packs down hard. So it breathes better, it gets more oxygen to the roots, and so it does much better. So it improves the soil structure tremendously. So it's so many different things. Like we said, generally people generally think, well, I need to change the pH. We get that, yes, you're right, but around here you need the nutritional aspects of the lime and what it's going to do as far as improving the soil is concerned. And what pH is, it was invented back in 1909. Sorensen, he was a Danish botanist and a chemist, and he developed a scale that you see. And so it goes from 0 to 14. 0 is as acidic as you can get, but you'll never find anything like that. 14 it's as alkaline as you can get. So keep that in mind. But it's a logarithmic scale, so we don't appreciate, we'll see the number, we'll say, well, I want 6.5, and the soil's 4.5. Well, 4.5 is 100 times more acidic, 100 times more acidic than 6.5. So keep that in mind. It's a logarithmic scale. It's just like we get earthquakes and hurricanes, different things like that, and we don't associate the numbers as tremendous as they might be. We don't appreciate it as much. And so normally, most plants grow with pH tests. We grow everything. We grow well over 2,000 different plants versus everything we grow in the same soil, 6.5 pH. So the thing that you say, oh, well, this is an acid-loving plant, don't work. Excuse me. Here. So, generally speaking, everything we grow best. We grow blueberries, azaleas, and other things that are not that particular. So, everything we grow is 6.5. 3.5 is about as specific as anything we'll even describe. And like I said, what is the soil out here? That would be actually 1,000 times more acidic more acidic, and then lower rainfall without it. And the south, and you can, it's really interesting too. You can go to areas, for instance, if you see a lot of red cedar, what we call red cedar around here, that native red cedar, we don't see many around here. If you go up to Edgefield County on that red clay, you see some. That's generally an indication that you've got a pretty good amount of calcium in the soil. Save all the palmettos, I stay tree down on the coast. Now they're growing mostly down there, naturally. We transplant them all up here, and that's where we natively put this part in, but they surprise them. So they generally grow with a high calcium content in the soil. So sometimes you can look at certain areas and see, for instance, it's very interesting. I've got a nursery tell me this. Greenwood, South Carolina, economics. Their water source comes off the well, and they're pulling off the limestone aquifers under the ground. And he said they have so much calcium in that soil, they don't even have to add lime in the nursery. So certain areas you'll hit little spots like that. I lived in my first job out of college was teaching in Florida. Same way, limestone aquifers, high pH in the soil, calcium. So sometimes you don't even have to, but that's an exception. So down here, we need the lime. And so, give an example to start with that Dr. Ty G. Gibson in his book. He said he was, when he worked for Virginia Tech, that the superintendent of the Norfolk Botanical Garden asked him to come and look at his rhododendron collection because they just weren't performing like they were performing. And he said that he was using like calcium nitrate, which is a good source of nitrogen and calcium, but they weren't looking like he thought they should. And Dr. Johnson said, came and looked at him, he said, you need the lime. He said, oh, you got lime, rhododendron? You're acid loaded. And he just got nothing out of it. He said, well, I'll tell you what to do. Since you don't want X by the line, you'll set up an experiment. So what they did in the experiment, and I'll show you, this is just the beginning of it. They put out sulfur. Now where the sulfur is acid inducing. So it's going to lower the pH. Now they put out an equivalent of 100 pounds of sulfur to the acre in the first experiment. That gave a pH of 4.7. See, they're way below what you need. Then they did just 50 pounds of sulfur per acre, and it went to 4.9. And then they did just the regular soil there in Norfolk, and it was pH of 5.5. And what he did, he took all of these plants that people normally call acid-loving. He took azaleas, camellias, gardenias, roses, blueberries, and he started with just rooted cuttings. He did nothing but plant them directly in the ground. He did not supplement watering. He didn't do anything. And at the end of 1 year, these first 3, and so often people will come and say, I need some sulfur, I need some. And you used to see these ads. You won't see them much anymore. The people call it about acid-loving fertilizer. You know, you saw it advertised on television and everything. And just trying to get you about acid-loving fertilizer. Well, that's probably the last thing you need. So people think you've got a bad sulfur to get it for acid, but not around here. Well, nonetheless, at the end of 1 year, all of these first, every plant was dead. Every plant was dead. Now, bear in mind what he did, he planted rooted cuttings in the soil. No mulch, no water, no supplemental waters. They were on their own. So, to carry on the experiment even further, what he did, now let's say add some lime to the soil. So they added 2 tons, 4 tons, 8 tons, 16 tons, and even up to 32 tons per acre of lime. Now, generally speaking, around here, roughly 2 tons per acre is about what we would recommend. Look what happened to all those plants. All the plants that were limed lived with no irrigation, no supplemental mulch or anything like that. They all survived, and they were deep rooted. The 2 tons per acre actually performed pH, didn't hardly change at all. So you get to a point where you're not going to affect the pH that much with that. But nonetheless, we'll go with the premise that 2 tons per acre is disrupting when you know a little bit long. If you check some soil that, now remember this was 5.4, you went out here and got some of this natural soil right around here that's maybe 4.5, you probably want to add 4 tons to try to get that pH up to where it ought to be and get enough calcium available for the plant to use. And then, 2 tons to the acre is approximately 10 pounds per 100 square feet. Well, I'm probably about 10 feet from the edge of the stage right here, and 10 feet wide, that's 100 square feet. So, what do you need? You need 10 pounds in that area to get you like, to just give you a, and bear in mind, if you overdo it, don't worry, it's not going to hurt anything. Lime's not something that's going to burn like fertilizer if you overuse and overdo that. And so that'll give you an idea of what you want to do roughly. And people will say, well, I want to line this, I want to do that. How many cups should I put per plant? You don't have to. I know a friend, and I'll show you his garden in just a minute. Paul Blankenship, a lot of you might know Paul, the Augusta certified rose expert and all this. He got me to share this at the Southeast Rose Society a few years back, and it revolutionized their growth. But we already did this talk, and he started lining it. He lives on the sandy sand, just like we have right out here. He generally puts 1.5 cups per rose bush twice a year. Now that's a lot, but he keeps on doing it, and I'll show you his plants in just a minute. So generally these rules, so you're not going to, and when I make a planting mix that I call it, I put it in a bucket when I'm planting and you plant in the yard. I put 4 cups of lime and 1 cup of fertilizer. 4 cups of lime, 1 cup of fertilizer, and then mix it back so it's a little uniform. And I use that in my backfield, but I put it around. So I use 4 times the amount of lime that I do with fertilizer in that starting mix. So that'll give you an idea that you just want kind of a general rule of thumb. Now here's Paul's blueberry field. Now if you mention Clemson or Georgia to the horticulture department, so they're lining blueberries, they'll say you are crazy. You have lost your mind. It will ruin them. Well, you can decide. Paul lines them twice a year. They're loaded with leaves, beautifully green, the color of blueberries, that bluish green. Look at the berries on it. Loaded with fruit. And this is a so-called acid-loving plant. I just keep emphasizing this because this is what we see. And it's just amazing. His whole garden is flourishing like this. And it probably supports Job's turkey. Now another thing, right there is his yard. Now bear in mind, that's 2 plants right there, camellia and hydrangea, big leaf hydrangea, that you would normally grow in some shades, Georgia sun. They're growing out in full sun. No shade whatsoever. And look at the hydrangeas, you would think, never grow hydrangea in full sun like that. What happens and we'll look at this in just a minute, just to emphasize it. The lime is going to cause deeper root systems. That's why all of those in that experiment, the Norfolk Botanical Garden, that's why those plants all survive with no irrigation through the summer. Every one of them did, because they developed a deeper root system. Those that had no lime or the sulfur put on, every one of them died. I mean, that contrast, everything died and everything lived. So that ought to be a proof of itself. But what happened? These big hydrangeas, I've been over there when it was dry and hot, and they not wilted. And when they flower, they're almost so covered in flowers that you can hardly see the bulbs. It looks like you took the picture in England where they don't get bulbs in before the reef, in the summer. But it's just amazing that it'll thicken the cell walls, which we'll talk about again in a minute, which makes them more resistant to the intense sun and heat that we normally get. So that's just a close-up. Now I took these pictures about 1st of May, I think it was. So they had already put on a fresh new hydrangeas hadn't quite started flowering yet. But that shows what they'll do. And so we say here, why is calcium, of which lime is our principal source, so important with plant nutrition? And number one, it's the number one mineral element by weight in a plant. If you took a plant, throw off all the other elements, the number one element left by weight, of course, oxygen's going off the atmosphere, carbon's going off the atmosphere, nitrogen will too, mostly. So nonetheless, but the calcium is going to be the number one element by weight that's left in a plant. So if you don't supply the lime for it, that's your principal source of it. What's going to happen? The plant's going to suffer nutritionally. They're not going to have as good a growth. I had a fellow, he interned with us about 20 years ago. That's what he told me. He was at the nursery yesterday, and he said, and he remembered my emphasizing line, and he said his friend had planted this little Japanese maple, and he said, come look at this thing, it's just not growing, it's just not doing anything. Of course, he did have it in full sun, which is not the best situation for Japanese maple. He said, well, what I need to do, he said, just try to lime it. And he did, and he called me, he said, he called me back the next year, he said, we got to come look at this Japanese maple. He didn't put on 3-foot shoots of growth. All he didn't change the fertilizer. All he did was lime it. And so that is the importance of getting the proper amount of calcium in the soil for these plants to grow by. The principal makeup, number 2 right here, the principal makeup of a plant cell wall is what I didn't get this in college. I searched through plant physiology books and said, what's that plant wall made of? The principal makeup of it is calcium pectate. Calcium comes up in anything. Principal dry weather for plants, calcium. And the principal makeup of the plant cell wall is calcium pectate. Now, if you don't supply calcium, through which lime is the source, what are you going to get? Thinner cell walls. That young fellow that told me about his daddy's experience with their apple orchard in Michigan, from Dr. Tyson's book that I mentioned on the handout, he said, you won't believe. We hardly have to spray for fungus anymore. Different spotting diseases on apples that they've got coming. Why is this? We hear the same thing when people start lining their roses. They can almost cut out spraying for black spot, not completely, but it sure eliminates it. What happens? You thicken the cell wall with a calcium pectate. What does a fungus do? It germinates in a little droplet of water on a leaf. It sends out with mycelium. It has to penetrate the cell wall of that leaf, and then it infects the plant, and then your leaves start drying. Well, what happens when you thicken that cell wall? What happens? They hit a barrier. They hit a stone wall right there that they can't penetrate. And so you cut out your disease problems tremendously, particularly foliage diseases with the increased calcium. The people come in, the rose people, I get, customers come in, they'll bring a rose. They say, look at it, instead of so big, rose stems like that. When you have a heavy thunderstorm in the afternoon, there's a lot of roses. They stand up. They don't hit it. Why? Take your cell wall. The principle is so simple, we tend to trip over it. Here's what we've got to do. We've got to line to get those thicker cell walls. So the stems are stronger, pathogens can't enter. It's much more difficult for them to enter. It's not that they can't, but you'll cut down your spraying tremendously by lining. And then it's necessary for the growth of the apical meristem. I won't mean by that the apical meristem. We've got two. When the tip of a growing point on a branch stem, or the tip of the root growing down in the soil. Now we saw with that experiment that he did at the North Botanical Garden, how all of those cuttings survived that they lined. It's because the roots developed deeper. They did not irrigate. I keep emphasizing that. It's rather striking in this book to see that they did not do any supplemental irrigation by planting just rooted cuttings, and all of them survived. So that's the stark reminder of us that we've got two growing points, above the ground and under the ground. we've got to encourage both. And we'll look at some more different aspects of that. So the deficiency of it gives you shallow roots, plants are more prone to wilt. You saw how those hydrangeas in that full sun, blanket chip yard. Full sun, not a wilted leaf on, because they didn't develop deep root systems. You don't have to water any early so much. Now, here's one of the most important aspects of understanding calcium in lime. Calcium is an immobile element in a plant. Now, what do we mean by that? We basically have two types of elements when they go into a plant. One we call them immobile, the other one's mobile. Example of a mobile. You know when your tomato plants are growing, what happens? You get green up here, what starts happening down here? They turn yellow. It works its way up unless you have a really good fertilizer regime. So what happens here? Plant needs more nitrogen up here where it's actively growing. It can actually pull the nitrogen from the lower leaves and translocate it to the upper leaves. That's a mobile element. Calcium is an immobile element. It cannot be moved within the plant. So what happens? When you get a calcium deficiency, the whole plant's going to suffer. Because if there's a deficiency, it can't move the element from a place of less use to a place of greater use. So, a greater need, you might say. So keep that in mind. It's an immobile element. I'll give you some examples of that. About one block from Paul Blankenship's house, a friend of mine, he and his sister, graduate, we went all the way through school together. That's a great boy. Robert called me when they were brothers. And Robert Grable said, Ted, I got this gorgeous magnolia tree in my yard. It wasn't quite as nice as it was about halfway between the top of that office there and the top of the building there. It was a good 20 feet tall. Picture perfect. Foliage to the ground. He said, that tree has never had a flower. Never bloomed. He asked me, well, this plant's never bloomed. So what's wrong with it? It's generally a calcium deficiency. Why is that? I said, Robert, I'll tell you what, you take your 250-pound bags of lime, put them around that magnolia tree. He called me back the next spring. He said, Ted, it's covered with blood. Didn't change anything else, fertilize anything, just lime. Now what happens? Because it's an immobile element. If you're not liming that plant early in the spring, it's going to take up all the calcium that's available right there and put it on new growth. But when the flower buds form on a plant for the next spring, they're the last things to form on the plant in August and September to bloom next spring. So if it doesn't have enough calcium there, because it's depleted all of it for its new leaves and stems, it doesn't have enough calcium to form flower buds, which it desperately wants to do right on the tips of the branches. So by him supplying plenty of calcium, 250-pound bags, the tree was pretty good size. Just put it around, you're not going to hurt it. And it was covered in flowers next year. I saw the deciduous magnolia do the same way. Over on the Roland Road in North Augusta, somebody came and told me that, and it came back next year. I even drove by to look at it to see the marked difference in it. So that's what's important about understanding calcium. You've got to supply and keep it available at all times. And then the other important aspect of lime is dolomitic lime. Here we have it right here. They have a supply of it outside that is chalking up to $7.99 for a 40-pound bag. This is granulated. We'll talk about that at the end. We'll talk about different types of lime. But it also contains magnesium, which is just as important, because the only mineral element in a chlorophyll molecule is magnesium. The only mineral element. I'll show you an example of that. The whole molecule of chlorophyll is built around one atom of magnesium. And so this is why some people can lime a lawn and not fertilize it, and in a couple of weeks after some good rains, your lawn's giving it some magnesium. So if you build up some chlorophyll really quick, and your grass just greens up. I think you get more stroke by this. A lot of things to do with lime. And so this is why we'll see a lot of immediate greening here. I want to show you a really gifted that's also impressed me. If you ask me why I'm a creationist and not an evolutionist, listen to this. Here is a chlorophyll molecule on the left. There is a hemoglobin molecule on the right. Okay? Which all of us have. We don't have any chlorophyll, we have hemoglobin. The only difference between a hemoglobin molecule and a chlorophyll molecule is the center of a chlorophyll molecule has one atom of magnesium. The center of a hemoglobin molecule, the only way it differs is it has one atom of iron goes around it. And you can't explain that by evolution. Nothing would happen like that. And so this is just one of the amazing aspects of the world that we live in that I think is just so impressive. So I'll give you an example of the importance of this line. One example that Dr. Tykins gives in his book, he said he met one of his students who was up in New Jersey when he was teaching at Rutgers University, and he and his dad were nothing but rose growers that grew in greenhouses. Now, you don't do that anymore in America. They're all imported from Kenya, for Europe, and from Colombia, South America, on the Western Hemisphere. Overnight, they're hijacked to some auction houses in Holland for Europe and New York for America. And then in one day, they're in the auction house. The next day, they're in a wedding. So if I need a greenhouse in New Jersey to grow flower roses, but this is what they did, 30, 40 years ago. So you met this student on the street, you said, well, how's your business going? He did principally grew roses for the floral industry. He said, well, for Christmas, we hope we'll harvest, I think he said, right here. We hope to harvest 20,000 roses this Christmas, he said. We're fertilizing, we're using proper, everything they thought they needed. I bet they were using calcium nitrate. And he said, no, you need to lime. You need that chlorophyll from the lime and more calcium that you'll get from the lime. And he said, so they put the equivalent of 2 tons per acre in their greenhouses. What happened? By Christmas, this was August. By Christmas, instead of getting the 20,000 buds that they anticipated, they got 39,000 buds. Through the next year, what did they do? They added 7 tons more lime per acre in their greenhouses. And the next year, instead of the one year they were anticipating 20,000 buds, the next year they harvested 105,000 buds. That just gives you an example. All the change, no fertilizer difference, just lime. And lime is cheap. And so keep that in mind because you benefit when I've had people come back. It's rather interesting. You'll get to talk about something and you won't ever hear another word about it. I'll get to talk somewhere on sliding. The next year I come give a talk maybe on something else. People come in and say, you won't believe my garden. You won't believe my shrubs. It's just that. And people often wonder why, early on the shrubs do so well in the yard. Slowly they keep fertilizing, but they just kind of don't grow as well and just kind of get a little yellow. And basically, I tell them it's probably that building contractor that you get, you buried all that particle board, sheet rock. So they live out for that for the first 12 or 15 years, and that's completed. So you got to start lining. So most people don't think of lining shrubs. They just think of lining the garden. So it's so important in both aspects of it. Now this is Paul's yard. He grows roses, not commercially. It's a hobby with him, but he has huge cools where if you've got a wedding coming up in 4 weeks, you can pick the buds and keep them refrigerated so you'll have enough flowers that you can have for a rose or some other big occasion. But his roses, are so clean, just clean as a whistle. And he follows this aspect. He's the one I told you that when he lines 1.5 cups twice a year. he's never run into any problems. He's been doing this probably for 30 years, at least 30, 40 years. He's been there a long time. But that shows you the stems, you know, we mentioned the quality of the stems and the less disease problem. Now tomatoes, that's really, really important. And I put this in here because they are really probably benefit as far as the vegetable, more with calcium, extra calcium and lime than anything I know. Who hasn't seen this? Blossom end rot. Generally, blossom end rot is a calcium deficiency, but it's also aggravated by adequate water, let it dry. Adequate water, let it dry. Keep it as uniform as possible. But the calcium deficiency is your basic source of blossom end rot that you need to keep in mind as you grow tomatoes and the benefits you'll get from it, that aspect. I'm going to show you some aspects of different things that really, you can't grow adequately. Agapanthus is one of my favorite perennials. And I've had people who have planted them in yards with a landscape, and they said, well, they just quit growing. I never will forget this Reynolds up in the trench. And I said, you haven't lined it, have you? No, I hadn't. Well, that's what you need to do. Start lining. I have taken bulbs at an old home site, daffodils, that all they're doing is putting up leaves. No light. Pick them up, bring them to your garden, start lining them. You'll start that little. And so, any bulbous crop is a real high to require a line. Most of them are native to South Africa. And South Africa is kind of like England. There's one big lime outcrop. And so they love the calcium that they get in the soil. So the crinums and different things that you get, as the crinums that we grow around here so naturally. We don't have as much problem with them as we do with agapanthus as far as putting up the flowers is concerned. But that's the aspect of this. Old pot plants. People say, well, do I need to repot it? Well, soil oxidizes. Most soil is carbon and hydrogen. What do we get from the air? When it oxidizes, what the soil in the pot goes down. I've seen some pictures of areas like in Everglades of Florida. Years ago, they built these houses on these peat bogs. Well, fortunately, they put down granite pilings in the ground so they hit, some shell down there underneath. Well, and they drain these peat bogs. So now oxygen can get to the peat. It starts oxidizing, and I've seen pictures of houses sitting 10 feet above the ground. Well, all the peat is oxidizing on that. When I was a student at Clemson in the 60s, we had in the greenhouse a palm. It was in the original Clemson graduation ceremony in 1896. And so this plant was still growing beautifully. It was in a cypress box. That was totally disintegrated. But the old greenhouse keeper, he needed to line it every year. And so a lot of these old house plants that you got, they don't necessarily need to be repotted. Just put your tablespoon of lime at the top of the pot and work it in a little bit every year. And you need to add some soil because, like I said, that soil's going to oxidize. If you get less and less and less, the hydrogen and the oxygen go off into the atmosphere and gone are they. So you can take these old plants and add them to it, add lime to the soil and get out of repotting a lot of times. You don't necessarily have to. Now if the soil gets so compacted, you probably won't repot it, bring it up and loosen the roots and all. But another thing you have to be, and put this down to be careful about the salt build up. If you got an old clay pipe and it's white, developing around that's where lots of salt build up. Stick it outside on one day in front of I said this way, kind of drip through it, run through it, it'll just dissolve a lot of that salt set right out of the ground. You're not have to worry about repotting because it'll get rid of that. They'll sterilize the salt builds up. I like to put this little illustration that one of my professors gave me to remember all the necessary elements in plant growth, and you make up this little sentence. C. Hopkins Cafe managed by my cousin Mo. So you've got all the elements that we have in a plant: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. that come from the air, right? You know, the first in phosphorus, potassium, nitrogen, and sulfur, calcium, iron, magnesium, boron, manganese, copper, zinc, molybdenum. And so if you want to know all the essential items, there is some debate about chlorine and aluminum. Some people think they're necessary, some people think they aren't. It's an ongoing debate right there, but that's a little interesting aspect of seeing all the necessary elements for a plant. So some of these better fertilizers that you get, for instance, like this Harold's fertilizer over here, you might say it's a complex bin, but it's a spoiler-rich fertilizer over here. It's going to have a lot of these trace elements in it. Not just the NP and K, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash, not just those, but it has other things in it too, which is so necessary for plant growth. Not needing a lot of quantity, but necessary. Now the sources of calcium, we talk about that. You want to make sure you get dolomitic lime. So if you look on the bag and somewhere you'll see some. But this one, the difference in it is, and I show just to give you an idea. Here's plain old wild lime, like farmers use, pulverized, and then here is pelletized lime, which you'll get in these bags. Now the benefit of this is just easy to put out. And if you're putting it out on your plants, you can put this out and they look like they've been on flower all over for a few weeks until the water washes off. It probably becomes available a little bit quicker, but not that much quicker. This has just been granulated. It has the same qualities as far as the screening analysis is concerned, which is really important. We'll look at that in just a second. But this is the two different types basically that you'll get from the dolomitic lime, granulated and then just the pulverized. And so to measure the quality, we'll look at that in just a second. And then you've got what we call hydrated lime. And this is, pickling lime. They mark athletic fields with it and stuff like that. Now, there is one good use of this. That is, you've got the blossoming rod on your tomatoes. Put you a couple of tablespoons and let it stand for a few hours in a gallon of water, and either spray it on the plants or water them with it. You don't want to overdo it because it's so soluble, it will displace other elements in the soil, so you don't want to overdo it. But nonetheless, and you probably even find it here, a liquefied form of this, but if you have just hydrated lime, then you can just make your own. But it's quickly available. So if you get the blossoming rot, you can spray the plants with it, or you can water them with it, or whatever. It's actually absorbed easily through the foliage and it'll almost stop it immediately. So that's another aspect of this. And then, or basic slag, didn't mention that. You'll see that available. We used to sell it some. But it is very, very soluble, and you can, again, displace other elements in the soil. You don't want to overdo it, but sometimes you feel hey, it's free. Just give it away. Don't overdo it because of the aspect of it being, don't use it exclusively because it is so soluble that a lot of times it'll displace other elements. And then gypsum. Now, gypsum is one of those kind of unique applications or sources of lime, sources of calcium that you can use that doesn't change the pH. For instance, say you've got a real high pH in your soil, you need calcium, but you don't want to raise it even more. Put out gypsum. The unfortunate thing about it, it doesn't have any magnesium. Now you can buy, here we go, magnesium sulfate. That's salt. You get it at the grocery store, you get it here, you get it just about anywhere. Very soluble. And if you want a quick source, and I've had some people get on this, the plants will green up so fast that it's, that's all I'm going to use. I just love this. No, you need the whole aspect of fertilizer, all the nitrogen and the phosphorus and potash and all the others. So don't overdo it. Just give you a quick greening effect. Matter of fact, a lot of azaleas you might think, it needs some iron. Well, you probably get a quicker reaction if you put this on it. If it greens up, you know it was probably magnesium, not iron. So keep that in mind for this, but it's not going to hurt like you would overdo some fertilizers. So so as far as the different sources of the calcium, there we go. And I mentioned this to start with, and to get the correct pH, you're going to really affect the availability of some of the nutrients. Most of the really essential nutrients are available at about 6.5, like we mentioned, like we grow most all of our plants. And some of these secondary elements that are not used as much, and they're not available at 6.5 as much, but bear in mind, they are available in minor amounts that the plant needs. It doesn't need a lot of it like it does, let's say, nitrogen or something like that. So keep that in mind as well. Now let's see, put sulfur, calcium, magnesium, but also minor elements are more available at a more acidic pH. But since they are needed in such small quantities, they're adequately available at a pH of 6.5. Now, here's some other aspects of lining. People often ask, why does lining cause peaker azaleas? Well, what causes blueness in azaleas? Hydrangeas. What causes blueness in hydrangeas is aluminum. It's aluminum. Now, what happens with it? It's the aluminum that produces blue flowers. So when one lines more, this raises the pH at a higher pH, and aluminum isn't as available, so they'll be pinker. So if you want pink azaleas, lime them heavy. They'll get pink. I keep saying azaleas, probably hydrangeas, like Gerald. And so keep that in mind, that if you really want to pink, lime them heavy. You're not going to overdo it. But the more acidic pH, for instance, if you around here, we have a lot of aluminum. Aiken County is known for its kaolin mines. Okay, it's high in aluminum. So anyway, you got a kaolin outcropping in your yard. If you use that, throw some of that around your hydrangeas, you're going to have some really, really blue hydrangeas. Where our nursery was, it was a kind of a hill over there. Horrible drainage was that white clay, but it really makes some blue hydrangeas. So keep that in mind. That's it. It's the aluminum that causes the bloom. It's not necessarily the calcium or the lime that just changes the pH. So you might say, well, it's lime. If I buy it from Walmart or one of these places that discount stores, Lowe's or whatever. Now some of them use the same lime, but you got to. There's a test for what's best as far as what is high quality lime. We call it a screening analysis. Now notice right here, I know some of you probably can't see it, it's so small right here. But here's every bag that's required by law. It must have a screening, what we call a screening analysis on the bag. Now what a screening analysis is, it shows you how much line will pass through 8 mesh screen, 10 mesh, 20 mesh, 40 mesh. Now what this is 40 little wires per inch. Now if you go all the way down to 100 mesh screen, you can't even see through 100 mesh screen. So look at this, the highest quality line that we could find was 80% would pass through 100 mesh screen. That is high quality lime. Because what happens, lime has to break down before it becomes available to the plant, the calcium and the magnesium. So the finer the grind, the higher the quality. That's why you have to have this by law. It used to not be that way, but now they put it by law. Matter of fact, I can remember when I was a student at Clemson, they used to sell, they called it, what they call it, all that stuff that's granulated that came out of marble lines up here in Elberton.
It was pelletized lime, but it was ground up.
Yeah, in about 200 years you would get the benefit from it. It was that coarse. But they sold it as lime. And so one of my professors, he grows a stink in Georgia, and got him to completely outlaw even calling it lime. because that's why it was so poor. So the higher the quality, the higher the percent that passes through these different streams. And Gerald asked our supplier, the manufacturer of this, about the difference. He said they don't want to even claim they have it. It's really higher than this. It's better, but they don't want to claim it because the government will get it and test it. If you weren't right up to what they wanted, so they'll actually do a lower estimate than what they think, just so they won't be caught by, say, you're lying that it's high quality than it is. So keep that in mind. That is the test of it. And even with the pelletized lime, say this came off of a pelletized lime bag. So it's been pelletized, it's been pulverized like this, finest powder, and then it goes through a process of spraying chemical on it that makes it granulate. So you can throw it out or go through a fertilizer spreader or something like that. A lot easier. And it won't just cover your plants like if you're putting it on your plant. So that might be about, let's see if I've got. Oh, that's an example of it right here. That's a screen. See, this is like, really fine on here, of course, you get the idea. That's what they have to go through to test it, to make sure you get the high quality line. So I think that's the last slide right here.
That's before you put it in the depth.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah, it's like that, but then once they pelletize it, so it breaks down quite quickly, when it rains or you get whatever.
Here, and I tell my line before you go. We needed lime, and we were getting a high quality of 80% to 100 meg stream. But we went to get a whole tractor trailer load of it, and the guy said, oh, that's not important, the fineness of it. That's not important. He said the whole fineness of it is, that doesn't have anything to do with it, roots breaking down. And I said, okay. So I went to another vendor, and I couldn't find one. So a salesman came into the nursery and he said, you need some lime? And I said, yeah, but. He said, what you mean? He said, I want to know what the stream count is before it's pelletized, what comes through a 100 meg stream. He said, well, let's call the plant. So he called White Limestone Company in Gainesville, Virginia. So I asked the guy that answered the phone, or one of the sales guys, I said, can you tell me what your percentage of lime has come through a 100 meg stream before you pelletize it and pelletize long? And he said, I don't know much about that. He said, hold on just a minute. So Mr. White comes on the phone. And I said, he's over the company. I said, Mr. White, can you tell me what the stream count is on the 100 meg stream of your line before it's pelletized? And he said, hallelujah. I said, what do you mean? He said, listen, I grew up in the lime industry. And he said, before I get my cup of coffee in the morning, that's what I check. What's coming through that stream count on a 100 meg stream. He said, nobody realizes how important that is. He said, you're the first person that ever asked that. He said, it's extremely important. He said, I got to come meet you. Well, he came down to Augusta twice to meet me. He said, there has to be a sinkhole in Augusta, Georgia. I said, why? He said, I've never sold so much lime to one area in my life. We were telling all the other nurseries about it, how important it was. But he came down twice, Jim White came down twice to meet us.
An interesting aspect of this, I gave the aspect of the fellow with the magnolia tree that wasn't moving. We've got a cousin, Dad's runs over in Augusta, just off the hill. She's cousin was adopted. He's passed away. Dad's was telling me, she had this huge lot of that walkway extension. She said, I've got camellias here that haven't flowered in 40 years. Under tall pines, and I reckon about 4 or 5 years ago, called us, Gerald went over there with our crew, fertilized the yard, lined the yard. She called me back next spring. She said, Ted, all of these camellias are covered with flowers. Hadn't flowered in 40 years, but from the line, they were starting to set. lot of it, so it's amazing.
We had a lady that worked for us, our husband, we had urologist, kind of from Georgia. And she had daffodils that never bloomed since she bought the house, and that's 10 years. I said, well, next year they all bloom. I want to tell, normally it's what I say is a cup of lime per 10 square feet. But Ted, I think that's
That's a little like, oh, potentially. No, that's not like,
a 3 by 3. We can all kind of visualize a 3 by 3. I think that's a ton. I think that's a ton of things. You could do twice that. But a cup and a 3 by 3 area is about what you need, or 1 to 2 cups.
and people always say, when do you line? Well, I'll be frank with you, if you've never lined 12 months out of the year, you're not gonna read it. But now is actually the best time of year to line. It takes it a little while to go into solution. It doesn't just react quickly like fertilizer. So the next 3 weeks, it will start going into solution with rain, like we're supposed to get a couple inches of rain this week. I don't know whether we'll do it or not. But nonetheless, there's no special time as far as line is. If you need it, line. You're not gonna learn it. Any month of the year. But when you do it on a regular basis, and with sandy soil like we've got here, I didn't go to the aspects of a lot of the population and that kind of thing we get with line. But nonetheless, heavier soils like clays, you might get by with every other year. But with the sand like we've got here in the sand belt, like we've got here in South Carolina, line it every year. You can't go wrong. Yes, sir.
And I've been accused of being somebody that gets paid to say this. We have followed your guidance on this, and we use that line and that fertilizer every year for our plants, and they're absolutely fantastic.
Good.
And, yeah, and I used to use a cup, 2 cups on a big, like, kilo. But everything in my yard, I do the same way.
Well, one thing I learned from coming, I give the line a dog too, but he gives it a lot more depth than I do. One thing I learned last year by sitting here on this talk was that lime is as good or better than gypsum to soften clay. But it also helps sand to, what do you call it?
Flocculate.
Okay, flocculate, the elements to hold on to it. So it works in that respect too. So lime is so essential around here, because I saw it no poor. Like George Washington, when he made his trip south, he lost the shoe on his horse, going up 25, what's 25 then? And he said this had to be the poorest oil in the world.
He made something just dire to the effect that he didn't see how any farmer could make a living off of it. So, of course, he was from Tiger here, Virginia, black dirt, which we don't know what that is. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
So, the same thing that you talked about, delicious and things like that, the amounts and everything, that's gonna be good for perennials as well.
Yes,
We have a
yes,
recipe for 1.5 cup per bush.
Right. It's kind of like Gerald was saying,
3 by 3.
think about a 3 by 3 area, 2 cups in there would not be too much. Yes, sir.
You have to disturb the soil just to be laying down.
That's a very good question. Yes, it certainly will benefit if oh, excuse me, yeah, thank you. Did y'all hear? He said, what about, you need, to disturb the soil. If you could take a good spading board, not like a pitchfork, they have the wide blades, you probably get somewhere around here, right? If you can put out in the soil and penetrate it better, you'll get the effect probably 3 times faster. So you don't have to necessarily break it up, but just with a spading board, so that soil can get down that roots. It takes a while to get the full benefit of it like that, but that's a good question. Yes, I would disturb it, and that's why I have to say, when I plant, I won't plant anything, perennial or woody, whatever, without my 4 lines of 1 fertilizer. And I just mix it all together, I just got me a bucket, and I keep that in the soil around.
starting out, which,
Everybody can hear, sorry.
if you're starting out to give lime, put lime on for the first time, which one would you suggest? Which kind of lime?
Either. Now-
You mean,
now the pellet-
you're talking about the pulverized or the
I
domatic?
just use pelletized. The pelletized, like I said, it's just so much easier to put out.
You can't hardly get pulverized.
Yeah, it's hard to get pulverized
Oh.
anymore. You go to a farm store or something, you know.
And the problem with
They said it's not
pulverized,
bulk.
with the problem with pulverized is the neighbor gets more use
Oh, okay.
than close.
Yeah, this, you put it where you want it with the pulverized. More expensive, you pay for that aspect of it, but it doesn't stick on the foliage and all, it goes right to the ground.
Okay, thank you.
But I
Yes.
understand you just broadcast.
Just, right. And bear in mind, like we were saying, per bush or something like that. But bear in mind how far those roots go. So the further out you go with your distribution of your line, the better off you plant it. Don't just put it right at the base of it. Really distribute it all around. In the garden or in your foundation planting of the house, in your perennial border or whatever it might be.
So I have a lot of bark mulch, do I need to disturb that bark?
It would help, like I said, with the spading fork, like he was asking, to disturb it, just something to penetrate with these spines of your fork so that it can get down to the roots that much quicker. Because it has to go into solution to get to those roots, and that takes a while. The pulverized, this higher quality though will do it pretty. We've had people come back and put it out and say 2 weeks later, oh my lawn just screened up, man, it fertilized it. Just from the aspect of the magnesium within the lawn
But you
itself.
still need to fertilize.
Okay.
In other words, it's just living off the old fertilizer with the lime. But, the fertilizer, the lime actually makes a lot of work. The average yard around here needs at least 10 bags.
Any others? Yes, ma'am.
My soil sample that I got from extensions and not mine, because there's something else that they measure in there, it says the availability is therefore change.
Yeah, I have yet to have anybody, and like we said, I had to agree with my alma mater. These recommendations come in from I don't care how many they come in and say you don't need the line. And forget it. We have yet have anybody run into any problem with the line. And people often ask that question, and I said, line. If there's a question, line it. And then let me know. I've given this talk to so many places throughout the Southeast. I had this PhD come up to me after I gave it, I forget where it was, and he said, you can't do that. And I said, well, I'm gonna tell you. Try it and come back and tell me I'm wrong. That was 30 years ago. I haven't had anybody, and I've given the talk at Clemson to all the PhDs in the horticulture department and in the agronomy department. And not one of them have come back and said, oh, you can't do that. Particularly this thing with blueberries. That just blows their mind. I have a friend down in Waynesboro that grows organic blueberries, and he's got acres. He shoots them up in all these schizophrenic price for them. I beg him to let me go down there and do just one row of his 30 acres of blueberries, and he won't let me get nearer with a bag of lime. And you saw Paul Lancaster. They're just laden with fruit and beautiful color, much better color on the foliage than his. More growth. I mean, it's just unreal. So I just challenge people, try it. Let me know if it doesn't. You'll be the first. Yeah.
But I can talk loud enough. I like Gerald's story about the lady with the azaleas, who said, oh, I can't line those azaleas. He said, he told her, I'm half of them, come back, tell me what you find out. She came back and bought more lime.
Yeah.
In 2 weeks.
I've had people tell me, particularly with azaleas, because that's a big thing, acid loving, that azaleas and blueberries. And people can't even believe it. Matter of fact, the lady from up in Elbert, Georgia, she comes to the nursery periodically. And we recommend was spraying daffodil fungicide for ground patching in some week. Spraying. I mean, she kept us in business by that. That's a mention. And I had told her to lie. Well, she got home with these, several, good many bags. It was several, about 2 sacks about that high. And her husband would not let her put it on what's going to be great. And she said, Ted, he had a business trip. He's going to be gone with it. So I just took that whole stack of lime, put it on the yard, and you know what? We had about another container of fungicide. So, yeah, there are some aspects, and you're right, every now and then you're right.
There is one disease that, it's a new disease called take on, and Lyme does encourage that problem. When you get the pH up too much. But I'm kind of with 10, because it will increase the cell wall so it can't get a disease.
That's the thing, and as far as pH is concerned, did you see that example we gave? 32 tons to the acre did not change the pH on that example from the Norfolk Botanical Garden. People get so, oh no, it's that high pH, and that's the problem with it. To put on it enough on our 4.5 pH soil to affect that disease, you'd have to put so much you wouldn't do it. It would cost you so much. So no, that's the aspect of it. So many people get thinking, oh, I'm going to put this lime in, and I'm going to change the pH, and I'm going to get it to that. Forget it. You have to put so much lime to change pH, it's unimaginable. That's why we tolerate, plants can grow around here on this 4.5 pH if you lime it. It's not going to change it that much, but it's going to give it what it needs to grow. Because remember what we said, there's nothing, no such thing. Dr. Titus, if you read his book, I'm totally passionate. I'm going to look, it's a project 300-page book. He gives examples on how he determined where it was that plants were they were acid tolerant and not acid loving. He went out in the woods with wild strawberries, and he said he started growing them in areas with different pHs, where it was down pH 4.5, they thrived. When he raised the pH, what happened? They got smothered out by all the weeds. The weeds were benefiting so from the lime, they smothered out the strawberries. So people look at them and say, oh, they're acid loving. No, you grow them without the weeds on high pH, and they do beautiful. So the same thing with, like the azaleas and blueberries, we grow them all at the same pH, 6.5. But I'm going to keep y'all getting them.
I didn't quite understand what this bag was.
This is a fertilizer, a slow-release fertilizer that has trace elements in it. It's Harold's fertilizer right here.
I'll give that call next week, on fertilizer. It is the only fertilizer that we can find that has miners in it. No other fertilizer.
Trace elements, these
Trace
small needed
Right.
trace elements there.
But the reason is it's commercial fertilizer. We sell it as a retail fertilizer. And it is absolutely incredible. It's all you need in your yard, and you're not taking second best by using it on everything. It's the best thing. And I'll explain all that next week.
About how much will the average cost? I got a
50-pound bag, probably do your yard. It does 10,000 square feet.
And it ain't cheap, but everybody that buys it comes back.
They do. They come back like crazy.
Here's a way to try it.
I've probably been using it for 8 years, maybe longer, ever since you guys told me about it, I guess. And of course, I only use this May 1st on my grass.
Right.
But, and I thought you had 2 different formulas, maybe we'll talk about next week.
Yeah.
But it's great. You only have to put it on one time for the year, so it lasts the whole year.
Okay, well, yes, ma'am.
Are we gonna get too much rain this weekend to line say?
No, not for lime. I would get it out before this rain. Lime takes a while. It takes to get it down to the roots.
Okay.
No, I would get it out before the rain. You will.
I will emphasize next week, but you never fertilize before May on grass. Everything else you can do early, but not for May on grass. I'll give you the reason.
Yeah, we want these woodies, when when they come out with that first flush, they have that available nitrogen and all this